What up, everyone? This is Mr. Lord, Dr. Professor, Dark Joker, here with another edition of Traditional Fans with Opinions, where I'll give my reviews for whoever I watched, read, or played today. And who are traditional fans with opinions? That is myself, and that is you, the viewers. With all that being said, on with the reviews. Kurumizawa's Folly, Chapter 20. So in this chapter, Kurumizawa is like interrogated behind Spectre Genda. So yeah, so like the Genda asks if he needs anything brought from his house, if he has any family he could bring it. Kurumizawa says he wants his glasses and case for his contacts. So you have Hada and Yoshikawa like talk, and then yeah, Yoshikawa like slaps Hada, you know, for like basically slaps him for like being basically for cutting his arm for being very reckless because it could prevent him from drawing again. Yeah. So yeah, so basically yeah, so in this so yeah, Yoshikawa says she hasn't said anything to the cops and that she wasn't feeling well enough to say anything. She asks Hana what he's gonna do about the ghost writing. And Kojima approaches Hana and Yoshikawa apologizes for knowing about the Hana being manipulated and that he encouraged the scheme or whatever. Then he was concerned about being held responsible by the publisher for what happened, but now he's concerned about Bilal being ended. Then he says even if it's a good story, if they publish under Hada's name, it will just be seen as a ripoff of Kurumizawa's style. And he says he'll resign. He'll speak. They're asking if he'll continue to belong under his name. Hada says he won't tell anyone he was a ghostwriter. And Hada says they'll find evidence that he was one drawn below, but he signed contracts at being a ghostwriter. And that will be the proof that everything that he agreed to everything. And yeah, and he asked for Kojima to act like he didn't know anything, that he and Cruz out fooling him. And Hada says he'll ask the police to keep everything a secret, protect his career. And so Hada says that even if it wasn't Cruz out drawing it, the public will look at the story as you know, something written, made by a kidnapper. And says if the ghost rain comes alive, things will get worse for showing victory. And he says he'll let Bilal be seen as a Kurumizawa work. So Kojima said, so he says he'll do it to protect the Kojima and victory. And God says Bilal was only one of 10 different things he wanted to draw before he dies. And Kurumizawa helped, and so Yoshikawa helped him remember why he liked drawing manga in the first place. And he says Kojima was able to read his handwriting. So Hada hugs Kojima. I was shocked that Hada actually remembered her name. So even some news broadcast of his saying Yoshihiko Kurumizawa was arrested. His real name is Masahiko Kusumi. He's arrested on charges of kidnapping and assault acquaintance. And so a search of the house found there were bones found. So the police are investigating the and there's called by people complaining about criminal writing stuff for them. He had someone calling Bilal commie nonsense that justifies police protests with it, which I don't see how that's the case. Like, no. Because even back then, if you had something that was inspired by real life things, they were very allegorical and to the point where a lot of people wouldn't even notice it. So that was the same way where it was Godzilla with nuclear weapons, all that one was a little more overt. You had Star Wars with Vietnam, you know. So yeah, I don't think anyone would connect Bilal to protests. But anyway, showing victory cancels Bilal, basically, and everything that's under that's sold under the name of Yoshihiko Kurumizawa is going out of print. Basically, it's the harshest punishment that a publisher can do. So every publisher that did something similar, that published something under his name, they all cancel their work. So Kurumizawa fans from in the industry. So the inspector tells Kurumizawa that he understands that the ghostwriting was done with consent, and that Hada brought the contract. And he asked for, mentioned that Hada asked for the ghostwriting to be kept quiet. And inspector said, that basically that's a civil matter, so police only investigate criminal matters. Yeah. So, and he said, he'll do his best to keep it quiet, but inspector asked why you would put together a contract like that. And he knows is that that Hada obviously couldn't understand the contract, and that Hada was a minor, so he couldn't enter the legal argument without permission of a legal representative. Since Hada's only 17, since there was no evidence of approval of any parent or guardian, basically there's a lot of holes that would be torn apart in court. And it seemed like that Kurumizawa was intentionally creating evidence to make it like he was taking advantage of a minor from a business standpoint. Yeah. And so, and basically said, even if that if it wasn't for the contract, people would assume that if I made claims about that he was trying to weasel money out of Kurumizawa. And he says, in the end, Hada's not charging him is not accusing him of ghostwriting, in the ghostwriting scheme, but he's got charged with something else. So inspector asked if Kurumizawa admits abduction, soul extortion. Kurumizawa says yes. He asked who buried the bones. Kurumizawa says I did. And inspector asked how the guy died. Kurumizawa says it was a fist fight after arguing, and he stopped moving. And then he asked if he knows a guy named Yoshitaka Sawai. Kurumizawa stands up. And then and so the inspector Kurumizawa stands up in shock. Or other cops. That looks like he's ready to fight Kurumizawa if needed. Inspector holds him off, saying, "We got bones, manga." uncredited Ghost Rider. And he wonders how it all fits together. And he says, let's compare his notes. And then Kurumizawa's members figure out the answers. So it hints that we're probably about to get a flashback for Kurumizawa's past, like about who Sawai is, and what the bones were, and we'll see what happens. Like we'll see what happens with him. We'll see how it goes down. But yeah, I thought this was a good chapter. You know, we're at the end game. We're probably about to reach the end of the series soon. You know, really like this chapter. Looking forward to the next one. Snowball Earth, episodes 8 and 9. So in these episodes, Verde attacks Mishima Mall. Now, a lot of the anti-kaiju defenses activate and, are able to hold them off a little bit. Takemura calls Tetsuo and Hagane, tells them to focus on protecting the people in the mall who are trying to evacuate to a shelter that's underground. And because Yukio's too damaged to fight. And Sagami tries to get to them all, but Hercules is healing, so his arrival's delayed. And then yeah, so Ao rushes over to try, like, after hearing that the mall's under attack, and she calls herself careless, and she awakens the land of men and eliminates and basically kills a like one of the tamer kaiju pairs at the for Verde. And so she has to fight against the three remaining pairs. So yeah, then after that basically it's all like the all the fights go on. So AO made a man still fighting those kaiju, and you see some of Sagami's backstory, a little more of his backstory where he tried basically he had eliminated probably multiple allegedly eliminated multiple of his bosses, and in order to get himself promoted he had like a messiah complex, so he was trying to get new saviors that would make him look better. So you see, like, Tetsuo saying that he like he basically like basically Tetsuo confronts Sagami and prepares to fight him. We should see like we should see like the rest of the fight probably next episode. So yeah, I thought it was a good episode. Looking forward to the next one. Pressure. So this is a biopic that came out this weekend. It's about so a lot of planning for D-Day. So like basically the weather part of it, we're trying to make basically Eisenhower wants a weather forecast to see whether or not Monday, June 5th was a good day to start the invasion. Yeah, and so you have Andrew Scott as James Stagg, who's like the British meteorologist who was like in charge of it, doing the forecast. Bert Fraser is General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Of course, he becomes president. Gary Condon is Case Summersby, who was basically Eisenhower's like secretary. Damian Lewis is um, like Bernard Montgomery, who's like the main British soldier in this. You have Irving P. Crick, who's like the American meteorologist. So yeah, you have like now as far as some stuff's fictionalized, so So Stag's wife was pregnant in real life, but the bombing of the hospital, that's fictional. And like she didn't give birth right after D-Day, it was a little later. And as far as like the whole rivalry between Stag and Crick, um, it was more like as far as how antagonistic it got. Um, in real history, it was Spear Pierce, who was a Norwegian meteorologist for working for the British on this, who was like who like they were who was really antagonistic with Rick, while Stag was agreeing with agree with Pearson. He did not like he wasn't as antagonistic with Rick in real life. And Don Yates, who was like a deputy to Stag, was their mediator in real life. And so with that, so Pearson's on this. Now Stag was one who persuaded Eisenhower to delay. And so they delay it by 1 day to June 6th, which of course we all know the invasion was successful. Nazis eventually fell in 1945. And so yeah, I thought this was a very good movie. Like very good. Like the actors, freaking awesome. Andrew Scott, Brendan Fraser, Chris Messina, Damian Lewis, they're all freaking awesome. Like they do a great job. It's a good biopic. It's about freaking tracking the weather. Like it's a movie about tracking the weather, and they make it really good. So yeah, I highly recommend this. Well, that's it. Did y'all like the stuff I reviewed? And if you have your own opinions about all that, you can put all that in the comments. Thank you for watching, and like, subscribe, and all that. And look forward to the next video.